All right, thank you for still staying with us here on the AM show on JoyNews. If you've been following us closely, then you know that we have a campaign, the Arrive Alive campaign, where we keep encouraging you because of the spate of accident. The numbers recorded this year alone from during the Christmas period to this time is very scary. So our simple message is for you to be cautious and arrive alive. In the spirit of that campaign, today we're talking about physiotherapists and the role that they play during injuries, particularly with accident. But because we also want you to arrive alive, there are some tips that we're going to share even before an accident is recorded, what we can all do to protect ourselves. So Louisa Afi Bolu is a physiotherapist with the Ghana Physiotherapy Association. Okay, that's a bit very long and confusing, but she's a physiotherapist, and she's here to help us understand, first of all, what they do and what you and I can do to prevent accidents, and if it does occur, what we can all do as people who probably be the first point of call, the first people to attend to an accident scene, what we can also do to help. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Explain your role, the role that you play in connection with accidents.
Okay, so first of all, I would want to talk about what physiotherapists do. When you talk about physiotherapy, you're thinking about movement. So anything which affects the way you move in terms of pain, low back pain or neck pain or getting cramps. So when you have difficulty moving, you see your physio. Okay. So we are the movement expert, you can call us.
Okay. Yeah. So if you feel your back is hurting a bit, maybe you've been flying a lot, so your neck is, that's the job of the physio.
Yes, so yes, you would call on the physio. Our cases range from babies to adults, but yes, that's one of the cases you can see when someone has pain. So if it affects the way you move, so when you have neck pain, for example, coming to work and sitting, it affects the way you turn around, or maybe you even go to the salon and you have a hairstyle which is like too much and affects the way you move and therefore gives you pain in your neck, stress, tension from work, from sitting for prolonged periods of time. All these things you would see a physio for. Okay. So movement. When you talk about physical therapy, when we talk about physiotherapy, you're thinking about movement.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's talk about you and accidents.
Yes. So we are here mostly also because of the Arrive Alive campaign, and what we want to talk about is how we as physiotherapists can help us or help everyone arrive alive. A lot of times when we talk about accidents happening, we are thinking about being on your phone for a prolonged period of time whilst driving, or texting whilst driving, or not having your seatbelt on, maybe being distracted. But sometimes having pain at a point in time whilst driving, having cramps in your legs whilst driving, maybe being in traffic for too long if you're using a manual car and having to brake for long periods of time can put you at a risk of getting an accident. And with this campaign, we want everyone to arrive alive, obviously, but we don't want you to just arrive alive, but arrive alive and be able to still move and be able to still go about your activity of daily life without having pain. So physios come in one, helping people with how they sit when they are in the chair. Like sometimes maybe you have your car and then you drive someone's car, but you don't make a conscious effort to adjust it to suit you because it's not yours, or you think maybe you're going to have it for just an hour. You decide to, okay, let me just use it like that. And that can put you at a risk of getting aches, pain, or some form of discomfort. And these are the things we should put into consideration. Some people maybe drive from here to Kumasi, and when the car stops, the driver doesn't stop to take a walk around, to stretch, and just stays in this position. Maybe they have pain in the knee or pain somewhere else, and they still decide to move about. So we are trying to educate people to move as much as possible. The human body was built to move. And therefore, if you decide to sit in this position, let's say for the next 3 hours, when you get up or for the next hour, you would definitely have some form of discomfort somewhere in your joint.
Yeah.
Yes, and that is what we want to do.
So if you're doing a 3-hour journey, at what point must you stop? And when you stop, what should you do?
Yeah. So if we're doing a 3-hour journey, I would stop after an hour. It doesn't necessarily have to stop and do a 10-minute walk, for example. You could stop, take a few steps around just to stretch if you are the driver, especially if you are doing the manual car with your left leg on the crutch. Just stretch it out, because you are seated with your knees bent, so you need your legs to straighten out. You just need to move a bit. You don't have to do any complicated activity. Move your limbs, move your legs, stretch, just stand, just warm up the joint and get used to being in another position instead of being stagnant in one position for long.
Okay. And the passengers on the bus?
The passengers should also move. Yes, obviously, in terms of driving, they don't have, they are not controlling if we are arriving alive, but it is also good that when you arrive alive, like I mentioned earlier, that you arrive alive and you are able to move comfortably. So passengers should make it a point to get off when the bus stops, to move about, even if it's for 30 seconds, just move. If you can stand in the bus, if it's a big bus and you can stand in it, and move, try and do that. I think sometimes we don't want to inconvenience the person sitting to us, next to us, so you don't want to ask them to move so that you get down. But I don't think it's an excuse. We should get up, we should move. That is why we were built. That is what the human body was built to do.
Good.
And we should take note that our body is the only thing we have. Yeah. Unlike our cars, when you can go to Abuso Kind and change a part. You can't get a spare part for your body. You can change it, but it won't feel the same. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about long distance.
Yes.
What if you're doing a short distance? You're driving around town, but there's heavy traffic. So even though you're doing, it's supposed to be like maybe like a 30-minute drive, you're stuck there, or maybe sometimes even 15 minutes. You're stuck there for like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And your legs are hurting. It is thick traffic. What can you do?
Sometimes when it's a lot of traffic, people still keep their legs on the brake. Yeah. So if you are driving an automatic car, park it. Put it on park so that you could stretch out your legs a bit instead of keeping your legs on the brake throughout. If it's a manual car, I don't know how you park the manual cars, but try and put it in a...
So you still can pull the handbrake?
Yes, and then take your legs off so that you can stretch out your legs a bit. And the key is also making sure your seat is adjusted to the right. Some people have their seats so far back that they are like literally there with their necks all the way up. And that can give you pain. And you'd realize if you were to stay in this position for even 5 minutes, your neck starts feeling uncomfortable. And one thing you should take notice, as soon as you're in a position for long, you feel it. Then maybe you start rubbing your shoulders, then you start feeling a bit of uncomfortable. Your body is telling you it's time to move.
What if the seat is very low? Yeah, some people who are very tiny, and when they sit, they get lost in the seats.
So you could use a pillow. You could put a pillow on your chair to help prop you up a bit. Even though some people might not want it because they don't want an extra thing in their car, you should think about the future. You should think about having pain build up in the few months and the amount of money you would spend getting it treated, the amount of time you are going to waste in the hospital or in the clinics trying to get to move again. So put a chair, put a pillow on your chair to help prop you up and sit upright.
Okay. So so now can we look at accidents proper and how we can handle situations if we happen to be around, or maybe you're on the bus, but you feel you haven't been affected. What can you do?
Okay. So one, if you feel you haven't been affected, I want to talk about that first. People don't have certain injuries or don't have known or visible injuries after an accident and think there is nothing wrong. Sometimes even just a small impact to the car can give you a neck complaint called whiplash, which we tend to ignore. So you'd realize after an accident, maybe 2 or 3 days after, your neck feels stiff, and you can't move as much. So that is something you can check to see a physio or see your GP to get it checked out. In terms of moving people at the accident scene, one injury I would like to talk about is the spinal cord injury. And with spinal cord injury, sometimes the person didn't have so much in terms of how severe their injury is. And because of the way they are handled at the accident scene, maybe they are put in a taxi wrongfully, can injure their spinal cord. We hope the paramedics would be available to help as much, but try as much as possible to move the spine as less as you can, if possible.
Describe where the spine is.
So the spine, can I stand?
Yes.
Yeah. So our spine, yeah. So our spine is behind us. So the bone, which runs in the middle.
Okay, please do it again.
I'll show you. Yeah. So it's when you move your fingers along your back, there is this bony thing you feel from your neck up down. So that's what you'd call that is the spine. Yes. But the spinal cord is in it. Yeah. So before there is an injury, a trauma to the spinal cord, the impact has to be very high. Yeah. I think God created the spine to be very well protected, because if you have a spinal cord injury, depending on the level, so if it's your neck, for example, from that level and below, you can have paralysis, difficulty moving, and yeah.
So should two people carry you? I mean, if there aren't the sort of description that you give as in paramedics, but you have to rely on local people to help injured people to the hospital, what's the appropriate way in terms of carrying whoever is injured? How many people should do the carrying? Where should they be holding?
So it depends on the injury also. Does the person have a fracture to their arms? Does the person have a fracture to their legs? So a lot of it will depend on the patient when the accident happens as to how to carry them. If I was to meet someone and they had a bone broken in their lower leg, for example, I wouldn't hold the lower bit and get the other person to hold the other end, because then if let's say this is joined and there is a fracture here and one person is holding, then one person is holding the other end, then we tend to distract it more than it should be. So that is something we should take note of if someone has a fracture. That is, even if you know there is a fracture, to move them as carefully and slowly as possible. I think a lot of times in the rush, like trying to get the people to the hospital as fast as possible, we tend to injure them more. So if you move slowly, you would be able to at least see if someone has pain per their facial expression, and carefully move a limb which is injured, without causing more harm.
Just the final thing, back onto how you sit. Is there a certain way you should sit and drive?
Yeah. So let me start from the neck. When you are seated, you want to make sure that your head is not too far forward and your head is not too far down. It's the same with sitting behind your chair, for example. So a lot of people some people would have their seats far back and then they are like there. So if you make a fist and you put your hand here, your chin should be able to rest there. Yeah. So if you're driving, you would want to look.
So that's the position.
Yes.
Obviously,
you're not going to walk. You're not going to be driving around like this. But just to make sure your chin is a little down, so you're not too far forward and you're not too far back. And what I used to teach my patients is make a fist, rest your chin there. And if I was to take my hand off, my head should stay straight.
So that should be the position.
One. And secondly, you want to make sure leg space. So some people drive and they're like literally there, and then try and move the paddles, try and maneuver their way through moving the paddles. So try and make sure you have enough leg space. In the office, then you would think of having the 90-degree angle. So for example, this chair is a bit low for me. Can I stand again?
Okay, wait. Let's adjust the camera and then you can stand. Okay.
So this chair is a bit low for me. Yeah. So if I was to sit on this chair for long periods, it would give me pain. You can't have, yes, in the lower back and sometimes in the upper back, because this table is a bit too low for me. So if I was using a laptop, for example, so if I stand facing my chair like this, because I'm tall, this should be at the level of my knee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So in the office, this should be at the level of my knee. Okay. But this is far too low for me.
But if you were driving?
But if you were driving, it depends on the car you are using also. So if you're doing a saloon car or if you're doing a 4x4, then you would know the height. So with a saloon car, I would advise put a pillow to prop you up a bit. Try and make sure you have enough leg space. And then the key is your neck positioning. Okay. So make sure your head is not too far forward or it's not looking too far
And your
down.
back? Because sometimes, you can relax the seat.
So when you sit, you need to make sure that your back is filled in the chair. Sometimes you sit too far forward and therefore you lean that way. Yeah, so your back is not supported anymore. So you want to sit really into the chair so that your back can be supported.
Whether you're driving or you're sitting in a normal chair.
Yes.
So this is the right thing for me to do then?
Yeah.
Like sit like this? Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that's Louisa Afibolu. She's a therapist, a physiotherapist with the Ghana Physiotherapy Association. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you.
All right. So you know what we say, wherever you decide to go, kindly remember to arrive alive. Now, the Church of Pentecost has named this week the Environmental Care Campaign Week. It's the church's own way of ensuring its members adhere to strict sanitation policies and also help make Ghana cleaner. Roland Walker has a conversation with the church next on their campaign.